Yeah, but let's go on, right? Let's go on. um, okay, this is where I wanted to get, right? So I want you guys to take out your financial calculators so that we can work together. um, okay, so here is where we're going to start learning about how to use our financial calculator. I know maybe during MAA it was last minute and maybe you had no one to actually teach you how to use the calculator, but that's what I'm here for, right? I'm here to actually teach you how to use that calculator in depth. Okay, so let me just take out mine also and then we will start. A financial calculator is an investment, guys. Unless finance or you're not an accounting major and you're not going to be doing anything related to finance next year, but I wouldn't advise that you don't have the calculator. It's very advisable. Okay, so let's let's all look at our financial calculators and also the screen, right? So the first thing that we're going to do, I will be teaching you about the key symbols or the key letters on that financial calculator, right? The first one is our N, right? If you look at the top left corner of your calculator, there's something written N. N stands for the number of periods. A lot of students end up mistaking number of periods for number of years. It can be number of years, but remember, like you learned in MAA, you multiply the number of years times the compounding, right? So that's why we're saying number of periods. Say you've borrowed money, they say that you are supposed to repay it within 5 years, or they say that you've invested money and you will take it out in 5 years, right? And then they say that it will earn an interest of, let's say, 10% compounded monthly, right? You would not put 5 on your N. Why? Because that is not the amount of periods that you have within that 5 years. It is compounded monthly, so you say 5 times 12 and then you put the total. What is 5 times 12? 60, or yeah, I think 60, or or what is it? I'm not sure, guys. 60 or 48, whatever. Let's say 48. So you would say 5 times 12, 5 years times 12, 12 being the monthly compounding, right? And then after you multiply them, it gives you 48. Your N, you would put what? You would put 48. Okay, so N is not the number of years. If you look at it as number of years, you need to erase that thought. It is not number of years, it's number of periods. Okay, now the next one is our I/YR, right? Which stands for our interest rate. Okay, it stands for interest rate. I will teach you guys about the orange part later in these lessons, the norm and the EFF. I will teach you guys about that in the next set of slides. Okay, it's part of the next lesson. But if they say it's 10%, you would simply just type 10 on your calculator and then press that I/YR button right next to your N. Okay, so 10, and then you press I/YR. That will register the 10% on your calculator. Next one is the PV button. Okay, the PV button, it's next to your I/YR. If you're given the present value, let's say the present value given to you is 1,000, you will press 1,000 and then you press the PV button, right? Or let's say you are actually looking for that present value, you would put everything else in your calculator and then at the end you would press PV and then it gives you the present value. Okay, same with the FV button, right? And same with every other symbol, right? If you are actually looking for that thing, you would put every other thing into your calculator. You would put your interest, your whatever, and then at the end, you would actually press the button of whatever you are looking for, right? Because there are some instances where you're looking for your N, some instances you're looking for your interest, some instances you're looking for your future value or present value and so forth, right? So you put every other value that you are given under its relevant department, and then at the end you press the button of the one that you are looking for. Okay, and then we have our PMT, right? Now the PMT button, it's a very important button, right? Because um it is split into two. Every button is split into two, but this one has significant importance. Why? The first part of our PMT button is the white part written PMT, right? When you're dealing with annuities where you have to make equal payments until the end of how many years or how many periods, that part is your PMT. So let's say they tell you that you need to make equal payments of 5,000, right? Uh, each and every month or each and every year or whatever. Let's say they tell you that you need to make equal payments of 5,000 rand. You would press 5,000 and then you press PMT, right? So that first PMT, the white one, is for your equal payments or equal payments that are made to you or whatever. It's for the equal payments. So it's when you deal with annuities. But if you look right under that, it's written P/YR in orange. That P/YR is for your compoundings. You need to tell your calculator what the compoundings for this certain calculation is, right? So if they tell you that it's compounded semi-annually, right, you know that there's two semi-annual periods, January to June, July to December, right? So what would you say? You would type 2, right? But because it's orange, you wouldn't go press that PMT button immediately. You would say 2, and I want you to look at the left hand side of your calculator. There's a downward shift that's orange, right? So you press 2 and then you press that downward shift to tell your calculator that please register the orange part of the button, not the white part. That is what you're actually telling your calculator, that I actually want to press the orange part of the button, not the white part. That's why you're pressing the downward shift. If it was vice versa and you needed the blue part, which you're never gonna use as a common student, let's not lie, you're never gonna use that part. You'd press the upward shift that's blue, telling your calculator that you want the blue part, basically. Okay, but that's not for you. That's for other people. You would never use that in in as a common student, basically, unless you're doing statistics and you want to calculate whatever, but you're not doing that, and you're not doing cos over sine or tan or whatnot. That's trig. That's story for other people. Okay, so you press 2 and then you press the downward shift and then you press PMT, right? Now if you do that, right, your calculator will show you 2.00, right? Let's just do that together. So 2 downward shift PMT shows you 2.00. Now I always advise that you actually, right after you insert your compounding, you check if the calculator actually got it right, right? Because it's an exam, you're under pressure. Maybe you forget to put that compounding, or you don't put it properly, or you put it as the normal PMT instead of the downward shift PMT. There's so many things that happen during an exam, right? And you can't be blamed for all of that, right? So to check, you would simply press that downward shift again, right? You press downward shift, and then right under that downward shift, you see there's a button written C, right? So you press the downward shift and then you press C. It should show you 2P underscore YR, right? Which means that there's 2 payments per year. Okay? 2 payments per year. That's what it means. Downward shift C, 2 payments per year. If we had monthly compoundings, you would put 12, right? So let's put 12 together. 12 downward shift PMT, and then it shows you 12.00. To check, downward shift C shows you 12 per year. Okay, it disappears quickly. Downward shift C, 12 per year. Okay, any questions before we move on? Any questions, guys, before we move on? Are you guys actually understanding? Please just a thumbs up so that I can know that you guys are actually getting me. Because what we're gonna do now is the actual calculations. Okay, okay, I see thumbs ups. So what we're doing now is calculations. So I think for the next 25 minutes, we will be doing those calculations. It's from page 8 to page 20. It's not that deep though. You guys will understand. Okay, let's go on to the calculations. Now, this one says um, an amount of 16,000 rands is invested at 12% per annum compounded annually. What will the amount be in 7 years? Now, whenever you're dealing with a TVM question or a question in general, but let's focus on TVM, right? Whenever you're dealing with a TVM question, you need to assess what is actually given to you and what is required of you, right? Because within the required, you know what you're supposed to calculate, you know which button to actually isolate within your calculator, right? So for these set of calculations, we're only looking at the top row, right? Literally just the top row and the shift button. But as we go on, we will be adding more, more buttons within your financial calculator, and I'll tell you what those buttons are as we go on. Okay, so it says an amount of 16,000 rands is invested at 12% per annum compounded annually. Now, this is what you're actually given, right? Now, when it comes to an amount being invested, I want you guys to listen carefully, right? If you invest an amount, that amount is the present value because it's the money that you took out today to put into a bank, right? It is the current amount that is in the bank. It's the current amount, it's the amount in the present. So it is your present value. Okay. So whenever you see that you invested an amount, then you know that that's the present value, right? And then so they've given us the present value to be what 16,000, which is the amount that was invested, right? And then you have been given the interest. It says at 12% per annum, right? That is your interest. That's your I/YR, right? And then it says what compounded annually, right? Compounded annually. Now, what is the number for annual? It's one, right? Because you have 1 year in a year. Okay. For semi-annual, you have two semi-annual compound periods in a year. Monthly, you have 12 months in a year. Whatever, and so forth and so forth. Right. Now you have 1 year in a year, so your calculator, the compounding, you will take it to 1 year. Remember how we said we do the compounding, right? You will now press 1, shift PMT, right? And then you check by pressing shift and C. So 1, shift PMT. It should register your compounding as um, annually. Okay. Now, like we said, you have been given your PV, which is 16,000, right? You have been given your interest, which is 12%. I'm sorry, it's 12%. You have been given your N, right? Now, how do you know what your N is? It's asking what will the amount be in 7 years, right? So we're looking for something that will happen 7 years later. Remember what the N is. The N is the number of periods, right? Not number of years, number of periods. Number of periods works hand in hand with the number of years and the compounding, right? So since this is compounded annually, you would say that 7 years times what? Times 1. And then you get an N of what? Of 7. If it was compounded monthly, you would say 7 years times 12, right? If it was compounded quarterly, you would say what? 7 years times 4 because you have 4 quarters in a year. If it was compounded semi-annually, you would say 7 years times what's that? Times 2. If it was weekly, you would do the same. There's 54 weeks, 54, 52 weeks in a year. You would do the same. Okay, so this is compounded um, annually, so it's 7 times 1. Okay, so now you've been given all of this and you've put the compounding, right? What are you actually looking for? You're looking for the amount that we'll have in 7 years. Now, if you think properly, it's the amount that we'll have when? In the future, right? Which is what? Your future value, right? Because it's not something we have now. How much will we have in the future? What will be the value of this 16,000 rands in the future? Okay, so you're looking for your FV. So remember, you put all of these things, all of these figures into your calculator, and then you isolate the last one, which you are looking for, right? After you've put all of this, you simply press that button, that FV button. Okay, if you press it, you should get 35,370.90. Usually your questions will be 2 decimal places unless they state otherwise within that question that you should do 3 decimal places. Okay, now I don't know if everyone understands, but like I said, you will switch on your mic if you don't understand. I will repeat. Let's go on to the next question. It says an amount of 21,000 rands is required after 10 years. Already they've given you so much in that first line. An amount of 21,000 rands is required after 10 years. We'll come back and digest it. If an investment will earn 12% interest per annum compounded annually, or also we're given two things there. Determine the amount that needs to be invested when today. Okay, now let's go line by line digesting what actually is happening. Okay, first line or first sentence, an amount of what 21,000 is required after 10 years. They've given you two things there. They've given you the amount, and they've given you three things, guys. Three. They've given you the amount, they've given you the n, and they've also given you what actually this amount will be, if it's going to be the present value or the future value, right? Because if they hadn't told you that it's required after 10 years, you wouldn't know what the amount is, right? So the amount is 21,000 rand. It's required when? It's required in the future. So we require 21,000 rands in the future being 10 years from now. So this 21,000 rands will be our future value because it's not an amount that we have today, it's an amount that we require in the future in 10 years' time, right? So we've been given an FV or future value of 21,000 rands, and then we've been given the number of years of 10 years. But these years, are they going to be our n, or would need to multiply them with something else? It says if an investment will earn 12% interest per annum compounded annually. So we know that of that n will be 10 years because it's going to be 10 times 1. It's compounded annually. There's 1 year in a year, right? So we'll say 10 times 1, and the compounding and the n will be what's that, will be 10. This also gives us the actual compounding that we need to have on our financial calculator, which is 1, right? So you would say 1 downward shift PMT. Okay, and then they also give us what? They also give us the interest, right, which is 12%. Then they tell us determine the amount that needs to be invested today. Anything that happens today, it's in the present, so that is the present value. Okay, now like I'll show you FV 21,000 rand, right? Interest 12%, I/YR 12%, and 10. Okay, now that's everything that we're supposed to have in this question. That is everything that we're supposed to have in this question. Now, I want to see if you guys have been following. Can someone switch on their mic and tell me what the present value is? Anyone?
6,761.44.
Okay, let's see if that's correct. Yeah, perfect. 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 So that is the present, that is the present value. And if you're not getting that, then you probably did something wrong with entering your figures or something. Okay, let's move on to the next question. There's a couple of questions, I think two questions that, no, it's these ones. Yes. It's these ones actually that I wanted to get to. It says an amount of 6,000 rands was invested today and will have the value of 21,000 rands in 12 years. Right. What interest will be earned on the investment? Right. So I don't need to dwell on what these figures are. It says an amount of 6,000 rands was invested today. That is our present value, right? Because it's what we have today. It's what we invested today, right? And it says it will have a value of 21,000 rands in 12 years. It will be 21,000 rands in the future. So that's our future value. The 21,000 rands is our future value. One thing, if they do not tell you what the compounding is, you assume that there is an annual compounding always. You always assume that there's an annual compounding if they don't tell you what the compounding is. Like in this question, they told us that it will be 21,000 rands in 12 years, and then it just stopped there. So assume that it's annual. So on your calculator, put a yearly compounding, and this 12 will be our n. Okay. What interest will be earned on the investment? So there's one thing that I missed in this question. Okay. There's one thing that I didn't tell you guys, and I want you guys to actually figure that out. I want someone to put all of these where they belong and tell me what the answer is on their calculator before I actually share what that tip is. Anyone? Guys, just put the figures into your calculator and tell me what the answer is. Guys, okay, it's fine. But it's the same thing we did here. You just put in these figures and then you tell us what the answer is. Anyone?
11%.
Okay. Should you did the right thing, okay? Should you guys know what I missed? Okay, tell me what I missed, what I didn't say here that you did correct. Because there's something important that I didn't say. I just want to see if you guys actually understand.
So you actually get a no solution if you
Thank you
did
very
not
much.
put the
Yes.
present value as a negative.
Yes. Thank you very much. So, okay. So, when you are dealing with a question where you are given both the present value and the future value, one of them you have to make them a negative, because if both are positive, it's going to give you a no solution. It's going to give you a no solution. And if you're in the exam and then you're calculating something and then you get a no solution, you're going to panic, right? You're going to panic and then you mess up every other calculation. Okay. So you have to make sure if you are given both your present value and your future value, one of them must be negative. And I heard the girl say the present value. It doesn't have to be the present value. Any one of them can be a negative, right? But I have my own rule when it comes to that. It you don't have to apply it, but I try to actually understand the situation. Right? Here's my rule, right? You have 10 rands today. You take it to ABSA, you invest it into a savings account, which is locked, right? You had 10 rand in your pocket, you go, you deposit it into an investment account. Do you have that 10 rand? No, you don't have it. You can't now go to the makulas and then you buy something for 10 rands because oh nah, you don't have it. It's not there. It's in the bank and you can't tell the makulas that no, I have 10 rands in the bank. Where is it? It's not there. So I whenever something is invested, right? You don't have that money anymore. It is with the bank, right? You might say you don't have it. If I told you show me this 6,000 rands now, you're not gonna show me because it's not in your current account. It's in some investment account, right? So it says we invested 6,000 rands. We don't have that 6,000 rands anymore. We gave it to the bank. Hence, I put a negative sign on the present value because it was a deduction from my pocket. I don't have that money anymore. In 12 years' time, I will be getting 21,000 rands, right? So when the bank gives me 21,000 rands in 12 years' time, I will be gaining 21,000 rands into my pocket. So it is a positive on my bank account. So that is how I actually look at it. Is there a hand? Mm, let's see. Oh, okay, okay, yeah. Thank you very much. Um, so as I was saying, if guys, like you don't really have that 6,000 rands anymore. You gave it to the bank when you invested, right? So it will be a negative on your bank account because now you can't go to Zami's on campus or big gyms and buy with that 6,000 rand because you don't have it. But later you're going to get it as 21,000 rand. So that is a positive because you're getting money. You're getting 21,000 rands. Okay. So I like it. I like to look at it that way so that I'm less confused as to what I should put as a negative and what I should put as positive. Okay, so the answer is correct. If you did put one as negative and one as positive, then you will get an interest of 11%. Okay, same applies to this question. It says an amount of 90,000 rands was invested at a rate of 10% per annum compounded annually, and it has grown to 150,000 rands. Determine what period of time it took for that amount to grow. I don't think I phrased this required properly. Or determine for what period the amount was invested. Yeah, actually, yeah. So it went from 90,000 rands in the beginning to 150,000 rands in future. What we're calculating is how much time did it take to get to what? To get to 150,000 rands. So our present value will be that amount, that initial amount of 90,000 rands that we invested, right? Interest is 10%, okay? We're given that compounded annually also. So your compoundings will be 1, right? Present value is what was invested initially, which is 90,000. And like I said, according to me, the 90,000 must be negative because I invested it, I gave it to the bank, I don't have it anymore, right? And then it grew to what? To 150. That is our future value. But how long did it take to grow to 150? What exactly are we looking for? We are looking for our n because n deals with the time, it deals with the number of periods. Okay, so your n will be what? 5.36 years. 5.36 years. Okay, that is It's as simple as that when it comes to this question, guys. Literally, it's as simple as that. Now, there's this part, right? The call is gonna end soon at 50 in 10 minutes. I will send another link in 10 minutes, and then you guys join immediately. Okay. Now, we're gonna deal with annuities, right? We have two types of annuities. And this is why I want you to listen, because this part will make a big chunk of your exam. Annuities, they uh they go a very long way in TVM, okay? Because they also go to your amortizations and whatnot, which we'll do in the next lesson. Now you have your ordinary annuity, you have your annuity due, and you did this in MAA, right? What is the ordinary annuity? This is when the cash flow occurs at the end of the period, right? So let's say maybe you're paying rent. You pay rent at the end of each month. That is an ordinary annuity. Or at the end of each year. That is an ordinary annuity because you're paying it at the end of, each year. Right. And then annuity due. Cash flows occur at the beginning of each period. Right? At the beginning of each period. Your rent, let's say you pay it at the beginning of each month. That will be an annuity due. So that is the difference. That's the main difference. Now, in our calculator, I want you to go to your calculator. There is now a new button that we are going to unlock. Right. I want you to look at your calculator. You see the top row, right? You see where the FV button is. Right below that FV button, there's a button that is written MAR. Right. There's a button written MAR right below the FV button, which is in the top right corner. There's a button written MAR. We're not going to use the MAR part of the button or the white part of the button. We are going to use the orange part, which is written BEG/end. That stands for beginning or end. Right. Now, when your calculator comes from the store, it is programmed to always be on end mode. Right. Right now, the calculations that we've been doing, they've been on end mode. Right. So the calculator comes programmed to be on end mode. That's why you do not see any writing on the screen that is written end. But as soon as you press shift and then you press that MAR button, please do that, you will see there's a small writing written BEG on your calculator. That shows that now the calculator is on begin mode. Now, if you have an ordinary annuity where amounts are paid at the end of each month, and then when for some odd reason you have your calculator set to begin mode, that answer is wrong. It's as simple as that. That answer will be wrong. Thousands. You will miss the answer by thousands. Trust me. Instead of you getting 5,000, you will now get what? 4,000, 3,000, which will be wrong. I mean, yeah, it will be wrong. Okay. So I advise that whenever you're dealing with TVM questions and you had a question that was begin mode, please do not forget to change it's very forgetful. Like you get very forgetful in the exam. You will do every question as begin mode, and every question will be wrong. Because trust me, they will barely give you questions where they are an annuity due and you have to use begin mode. Majority of your questions, 9 out of 10 of your questions will come as an ordinary annuity. Now imagine if the first question is an annuity due and you put begin mode, and for the other 9 questions you use begin mode because you forgot. Now you got one right, sure, but everything else is incorrect. Okay. So please do not forget to change. It is very forgetful. Like you do forget. I myself used to forget also. Okay. So let's just change our calculator back to end. So press that shift again and press MAR, shift MAR, and you see that begin, it disappears from your calculator and there's no writing because your calculator, the default setting is that your calculator is on end mode, so they don't have to write that the calculator is on end mode. Okay. Now let's look at questions. First one, Kabelo wants to deposit 11,000 rands at the end of each year. By the way, when we deal with annuities, like I said previously, we are dealing with a situation where there are amounts that are being paid each and every period. Here, nothing was being paid. We were calculating how much it took, whatever. There were no equal payments that were being made, right? It was just 90,000, and then at the end is 150,000. That money, it grew in value, right? But in annuities, there are amounts that are being paid each and every quarter, each and every period, I mean. So that is the difference. That is what should tell you that something is an annuity if you see that there are equal amounts that are being paid. Okay, now let's look here. Tabelo wants to deposit 11,000 rands at the end of each year. That should scream annuity, because if it says each year, it means that these are recurring payments, right? So it should show you that it's an annuity. So he wants to deposit 11,000 rands at the end of each year into a savings account for what? For 5 years. If he can earn an interest of 11% per annum compounded annually, how much money will he have at the end of the 5 years? Okay, now let's digest this question. Our N, 5, right? Why? It's 5 years. He wants to deposit for 5 years and it's compounded annually. 5 times 1, 5, right? Interest, 11%. No brainer, they've given us the interest. Okay, PV. Are we given the present value? No, we're not given. Some people mistake these deposits for present value. But if these deposits are happening each and every year or each and every period, then that is not your present value, because present value happens once. You deposit money once for it to be a present value. You do not deposit money each and every year for the next 5 years. If you do that, then that will be your PMT, your payment per period. You have 1 year periods. Those equal payments of 11,000 rands will be the PMT. Okay, so we have no present value in this instance. And what are we looking for? We're looking for our future value. Okay, we're looking for our future value. And what will our future value be? It will be 68,505.82. Will be 68,505.82. Okay, I hope everyone understands. You know it's an annuity when there's equal payments that are made each and every period. These payments are recurring. Okay, and that 11,000 will not be your present value, it will be your PMT. PMT is for payment per period. Okay, now let's go to example 2. Okay, guys, I think the call is ending now. Let's hang up this call and then wait. How long? Let's see. Oh, 4 minutes. Oh, guys, don't leave. 4 minutes. So the call is gonna kick you out in 4 minutes. I will send another link so that we can continue and finish. Okay, let's just finish these questions. It says okay, Rob's mom wants to deposit enough money into a savings account today so that she can afford to give Rob an allowance of 6,000 rands at the end of each year for 4 years. One thing I missed to tell you, remember it says what? At the end. So this shows you that this is an annuity. It's an ordinary annuity, right? So you don't have to put any setting because the calculator is on default. Here also it says Rob's mom wants to deposit enough money into a savings account today, right? So that she can afford to give Rob an allowance of 6,000 rands at the end of each year for 4 years. If she earns an interest rate of 9% compounded annually on her savings, how much will she deposit today? So what are we looking for? We're looking for the present value. We're looking for how much she will deposit when today, right? She wants to deposit a certain large amount of money, which will allow her in the next 4 years to take out 6,000 rands, right? Each and every year. So she wants to deposit that lump sum so that she can take out 6,000 rands. So we're calculating what present value because we're calculating how much she will deposit today. Our N 4 years, right? 4 times our compounding being annually, so it's just going to be 4. Okay, interest 9% given to us. Okay, future value 0. Why? She wants to deposit a certain amount of money today, and then in the next 4 years, this money will allow her in the next 4 years to take out 6,000 rand. So, can you agree with me that after 4 years, after she takes out the last 6,000 rands, there will be zero in that account, right? There must be zero in that account because she would have taken out from the amount she deposited. She wants to deposit an amount that will enable her to only take out 6,000 rands every year for the next 4 years. After that, that money will have been exhausted. There will be nothing left in that account. So the FV will be zero after 4 years. Okay? PMT 6,000 rands. Why? These are equal payments that are made to the son or equal withdrawals basically. Okay, so 6,000 rands. What are we looking for? Present value. So you put all of this into your calculator, then you press the PV button. She should deposit what? 19,438.32. That's what you should deposit today. Okay. Are there any questions before the call ends, guys? If I don't record. Okay, so let's go to the second part. The second part has 12 slides, guys. So I think we can swoosh through it, especially the first few parts. Oh no, we can't. Hey, we can't. There's a couple of things that I have to sort of like emphasize on the second part. So you guys are ready, ne? I need you guys to. I know I said pay attention in the previous part, but that was lightweight. It really was lightweight. I need you guys to fully focus this time because this next part is quite bumpy. Okay, it is quite bumpy. So let's go. Let's go. So part two. Okay, part two. Okay, now first part. Uneven cash flows. Right now, remember when we dealt with annuities, the first part we dealt with even cash flows where um like you would withdraw the same amount of money, right? Let's say 11,000, you're withdrawing 11,000 for the next 5 years, or you're depositing 11,000 for the next 5 years. But here we are dealing with uneven cash flows where you deposit 12,000 this year, next year you deposit 5,000, the other year you deposit 3,000, and so forth and so forth. So let's start reading. For future value and this slide is quite important. Okay, so for future value and even cash flows, you will calculate the future value of every cash flow and then you add them up, right? So what do? You treat each and every cash flow as if it is a single cash flow. You adjust your number of periods, right? And then you add the values at the end to get the overall future value. It might sound confusing now. I will show you an example just now of future value and even cash flows. For present value and even cash flows, however, you use the net present value method to calculate the present value of uneven cash flows. I will also show you how to do that. Okay. Now, let's look at an example, right? It says this is for future value uneven cash flows, by the way. I want you to pay close attention to this example. It says Mike has just commenced with his studies. He will study for a period of 4 years. As an incentive, his father has promised to deposit money into his account under the following conditions. If Mike passes all of his subjects, in his first year, his dad will deposit 1,000 rands in a special savings account, earning 12% interest compounded annually. If Mike passes all of his second year subjects, his dad will deposit double of that amount, which is 2,000 rand, right? And then the same will apply for his third year, where his dad will deposit now 4,000, okay, which is double of the previous year's amount. Assume that it's not Grant, it's Mike. Assume that Mike will pass all of his subjects every year. Calculate the amount that will be available for him at the end of his studies. So we have three different cash flows, right? We have 1,000, we have 2,000, and then we have 4,000. Okay, so we have three different cash flows, and then we have to calculate how much these cash flows will be at the end of his studies, at the end of his third year, basically. Okay, now because it's future value uneven cash flows, we have to treat each cash flow individually. It is wise to draw up a timeline in this situation. Okay, it is wise to draw up a timeline so that, remember, you have to adjust your n, right? You have to adjust your number of periods. This will help you to adjust your number of periods. His degree is 3 years long, right? So we have T1, which is first year, T2 second year, and T3 third year. Okay, T1, if he passes, he gets 1,000. T2, if he passes, he gets 2,000. T3, if he passes, he gets what? 4,000. Okay. Now, the present value is what he will get each year if he passes, right? So first year, 1,000, second year, 2,000, third year, 4,000. It's fine, happy days. And that is where the problem comes. You have to adjust your n. How? How many years does it take from his first year to get to his final year? What is it? It's 1, 2, right? So from T1 to T2, it's 1 year. From T2 to T3, it's another year. So it's 2 years. Okay? How many years does it take from his second year to get to his final year? It's from T2 to T3. It's just 1 year. And how many years does it take from his third year to get to his third year? It's 0 years. Okay, so you have to adjust your your years, your n, basically. Okay, I'm not sure if I am clear when it comes to the adjustment of the n, or for the number of years, basically. If I'm not clear, please do make sure to switch on your mic and ask. Okay, now interest, same amount of interest, happy days. It's quite constant. Then now you would put all of this into your calculator. I think this is it is all of the information that you would need. The most difficult part of this calculation is actually adjusting the end. Like I said, from T1 to T3, you start counting from T2, right? So year 2, year 3. It's like when you calculate, like whenever you're doing any calculation, right? You start from the next year. So if you're calculating, I don't know, I don't know an example, but you guys get the flow of it, right? From T1 to T3, it's 2 years, right? Um, T2, T3, 2 years. From T2 to T3, it's 1 year. Okay. Now you calculate the future value of all of them. Like I said, you treat them as um, individual cash flows. So you calculate the future value for T1, calculate the future value for T2, calculate the future value for T3. Okay. Anytime when you have an n of 0, the present value will be equal to your future value. Okay, every time. Okay, but here you do those calculations, and then you here 1,000 n is 12%. Your future value would be 1,254.40. Here for T2, 2,000 rands PV and 1 interest 12%. The future value would be what? Would be 2,240. And then for T3, PV 4,000 and 0 because it's in the same year. Interest 12%. Your future value will be 4,000. And then you take all of those amounts, you add them up. Don't forget to add them up because you are looking for one future value amount. Okay, so to get the overall future value, you would say 1,254.40 for T1 plus 2,240 for T2 plus 4,000 rands for T3. You get the answer, which is 7,494.40, which is the main future value. Okay, before I move on, does everyone understand the future value and even cash flows? Is it clear to everyone? Okay, if there's any questions, please do ask. And if you're shy to ask here after the lesson, you are free to ask me. Why is it always starting from the beginning? Uh, you are free to text me and ask me. Okay, now with present value and even cash flows, like I said, you will do the net present value method. Right? Now, if you look at your financial calculator, that is where we now add another button. Right? We're now adding another button. I want you to look at the top right corner. You see where we do our begin and end mode, right? The MAR button. To the left of that MAR button, there's a button written PRC, right? The button is written PRC, but in orange, it's written NPV, right? It's written NPV. That is the button that we will be working on. Okay, we're not working on the PRC button, we're working on the NPV button. Okay, so NPV, you calculate it when you have uneven cash flows and you want to calculate the present value of those uneven cash flows. So it takes all of those uneven cash flows and makes up a present value. It's unfortunate that the financial calculator that doesn't have a function for the future value of uneven cash flows, but luckily we have a function for the present value uneven cash flows. Okay, so what do you do? That will not be the only button that we're adding when we deal with NPV. You will be adding another button also. I want you to look at the third row of your financial calculator. The third row of your financial calculator. The first one says K, right? Second one is a percentage. The third button on your third row is written CFJ. CFJ is how we are going to enter these uneven cash flows. Okay, so let's read this question. It says cash flows of 9,000, 4,000, 6,000, and 11,000 occurred for 4 years respectively. I assume that you guys know when that year 1 will be 9,000, year 2 will be 4,000, year 3 will be 6,000, and year 4 will be 11,000 since they said they occurred respectively. Right. Then it says determine the present value of the cash flows if they have an interest rate of 12% compounded annually. So we've been given these cash flows, these uneven cash flows, 9,000, 4,000, and so forth, right? And we're asked to calculate the present value if the interest rate is 12%, right? Now, on your calculator, first thing you will do, you enter that interest rate, 12, and then I/YR. Simple, right? You enter the 12%. Now, it gets complicated when it gets to this part, right? You have these cash flows for 4 years, right? Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. But on your calculator, you would enter them as CFJ, right? So it would be CFJ 0, CFJ 1, CFJ 2, CFJ 3, CFJ 4, and so forth. Okay? So each cash flow, the CFJ must correspond with the year of each cash flow. So the 9,000 must be CFJ 1, the 4,000 must be CFJ 2, the 6,000 must be CFJ 3, and then the 11,000 must be CFJ 4. How do you put it? You simply press 9,000 and then you press CFJ, which is the third button in your third row, right? And then 4,000 CFJ. It will show you that this amount has been put as CFJ1, CFJ2, CFJ3, and CFJ4. Okay, but our CFJ function does not start at 1. It starts at 0. Okay, it starts at 0. But here, we are starting at year 1. You have to make sure that your CFJ corresponds with when this deposit was made. Because now we cannot say 9,000 was made at year 0. Your CFJ 0 means that 9,000 was made at year 0. So if we have nothing that was deposited at year 0, what do we put as our CFJ 0? Because it starts at CFJ 0. What we put as our CFJ 0 is 0. Okay, so in most cases when you're dealing with NPV, your CFJ 0 will be 0. Unless they tell you that you deposited money this year, which is year 0. If you deposited money this year, then your CFJ 0 will be that money that you deposited. Or if you received money this year, CFJ 0 will be that money that you received this year. Okay, so first part, you press 0 because we don't have a CFJ 0, right? So you press 0 and then you press CFJ. It's just told you on your calculator CFJ 0, right? You see that. And then 9,000 CFJ. It says CFJ 1, right? 4,000 CFJ, CFJ 2, 6,000 CFJ, CFJ 3, and then 11,000 CFJ, CFJ 4. Right. Now remember that the NPV button is orange. So after you put all of these CFJs, you would press shift and then you press NPV, right? And then your NPV will give you an answer of 22,485.87. Okay. I don't know if all of you guys get that. Do you guys understand the NPV part? Are there any questions, guys? Please don't be shy. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is the last part of our lesson. I will skip this small part and then I'm going to do the larger part, which will be the last part of our lesson, and then we'll call it a night. Okay. Okay. Which is amortizations. You guys may have drawn an amortization schedule or schedule, however you want to call it, at MAA. We still do have that. Yeah, we still do have that. Let me just quickly go there. Now, amortizations, right? What is an amortization? Let's start there. You have you've taken out a loan, right? From ABSA. You've taken out a loan Those payments that you make each and every month towards that loan that you've taken out, that is you actually amortizing that loan. You are repaying it. So essentially, amortization is basically the repayment of a loan. Okay, I hope you understand that. It's literally just that. It is um, the repayment of a loan, basically. Okay, so we add two more buttons when it comes to amortization. We add, I want you guys to look at the FV button on your calculator. The FV button on your calculator has an orange part. The orange part is written amount, right? If you press shift amount, it will show you the entire amortization of the loan for that specific period. Okay? And then we have the input button. I will show you how we use the input button. Don't worry about it. I will show you how we use the input button. Okay? So again, amortizing, you borrow money from ABSA, the repayment including interest, you are basically amortizing that loan when you repay the loan. Okay? Now we're gonna move straight to examples, because when it comes to amortization, most of the part you have done it during annuities, right? We've done it during annuities, so it's not really that deep. It's not new. There's only a few things that are new. Okay, so the first part, when we are dealing with amortizing a loan, we have to calculate our payment period. Trust me, they're not going to give you the PMT, right? They're going to give you a scenario like this. It says, suppose you borrow 280,000 rands from Capital Bank at an interest rate of 11% compounded monthly. Okay, you need to repay the loan over 6 years in monthly installments. Now, the first part, calculate your PMT. You cannot do an amortization schedule without calculating that PMT. Okay, now we have to calculate the PMT. The main question is construct the amortization schedule for the third year. Okay, we're going to do that. But first, step one, you calculate the PMT using the information that is given above, right? PV. When you borrow money and the bank gives you money, they give you that money today, right? So it's the amount of money that you have today. That is your present value. Okay, so PV is 280,000 rand, right? And it says here 6 years in monthly installments. So you would say 6 times 12, which gives you an N of 72 months, basically. Okay, interest 11% given to you, future value 0, because after you are done repaying the loan, what's left? Nothing is left, right? You are done repaying the loan. I think that's the 15-minute warning. Will be done in 15. And then P slash YR. Remember what P slash YR is? This is your compounding. So you will change your calculator to compoundings of 12, right? So 12 shift PMT. So I want you guys to do this calculation with me, please. So 280,000 rands PV, 72 N, 11% FV0. Now what is our present value? So our present value will be what? No, our PMT, sorry. Our PMT. Our PMT will be 5,329. Let me just complete this calculation on my calculator, because I will need it when it comes to amortizing the actual loan. 11%, 0 FV, on PMT. 5,329.54. Now, you do not erase anything on that calculator. Okay, you don't erase anything on that calculator. Now, this step alone could be 5 marks. Could be 5 marks. Okay, just this step alone. Then you actually are supposed to construct the third year amortization schedule. But here I constructed year 1, year 2, and year 3 to sort of like enhance the understanding. Okay. Now, same scenario. Now, this is where the new buttons come in. Remember, I said if you look at the FV button, there is in orange, it's written amort, right? So, what you would do if you want to get the amortization for the first year, you would say shift amort. Remember, you don't erase any of that information. That 5,329.54, it's supposed to be there, right? It's registered now as your PMT. So you simply just press shift and then amort, shift FV, right? What it shows you now, I want you guys to be following with me. What it shows you after you press shift amort is it's written 1 to 12, right? Remember that our compoundings are monthly. So it shows us how many months are in year 1, or what are the months numbers in year 1, right? So year 1 starts from month 1 to month 12, basically. Okay? Starts from month 1 to month 12. Then you press the equal sign. You have the principal amount, which is the main repayment amount of what? 34,878.17. Okay? That is how much will be repaid in year 1 towards that loan. Okay? Press equal again, it gives you the interest. Right. Interest 29,076.31. Okay? You have the PMT, right? And then you press equal again. It will give you the balance at the end of year 1, how much you're still owing at the end of year 1, which is what? 245,121.83. Okay, that balance, you carry it down to year 2. That is how much, that is the opening balance for year 2. The ending balance of year 1 is the opening balance for year 2. Okay, now for year 2, what would you do? You would again press shift, amort. Now your calculator shows you what? 13 to 24. Year 2 starts on the 13th month, it ends on the 24th month. That is what it means. Okay, you press equal, shows you how much was paid in that year, which is 38,914.22, which is the principal amount. Right, you press equal again, the interest that was paid that year is 25,040.26. Okay, the PMT is already given, we've calculated it, right? It's advisable that you write down all of the PMTs that you have at the beginning of your table so that you don't have to bother with it. Okay, and then you press equal again. How much is left within that year? 206,207.61. Then that 206,207.61 will be the opening balance in the next year, which is year 3, which is what we actually want. Okay, so again, you press shift, amort. Year 3, it shows you 25 to 36. Year 3 starts on the 25th month, ends on the 36th month, right? Press equal, how much was paid in year 3? 43,417.32. That's the principal amount. On your calculator, it does show PRIN, which stands for principal. Okay? Equal INT or interest. On your calculator, it says 20,537.16. Okay? Equal again. The ending balance is 162,790.29. So you see that the calculator actually does everything for you. What you do is calculate the PMT and then everything else will flow. Now, sometimes they ask you for a specific month. How much was paid in a specific month? Say for instance, I ask you now how much was actually paid, or what was the amortization on the 8th month, month number 8. Remember, the calculator is programmed. When you press shift amort, it always gives you the yearly amortization, always. Now you have to tell the calculator that I only want what happened on the 8th month. What would you do? That's where the input button comes in. That is where input comes in. Remember, we've introduced a mode. Now it's time to introduce input. If you look at the top left corner, there's N. Under N, there's a button written input. It's in white, so you don't have to press shift. Okay? It's in white. So if you want a specific month or a specific period, let's say month 8, right? You would go to your calculator. You don't erase anything, remember. You would press 8. Let's do it together. You press 8, you press input, and then you press shift amount. So 8 input, tell your calculator that this is the month that I want. That's why you pressing input, right? 8 input, and then you tell it to amortize that amount by pressing shift amount. Now you will see on your calculator it's written 8 to 8, right? Meaning that it's only the 8th month that is going to be shown. You press equal, the principal, how much was paid on the 8th month? 2,945.11. How much interest was paid? 2,384.43. And then how much is left? 257,174.72. Okay, and that is it.